I keep saying I'm going to make that structure block tutorial, but I still haven't made it. At this point, I might as well just tell everyone that I'll make it when pigs fly. What? Oh. Well, okay then. Well, hello there. Yep, you heard right. I'm finally doing the structure blocks tutorial. And why am I doing the structure blocks tutorial now? Because Minecraft 16W21A has been released, which is the second snapshot for 1.10, and they have fixed at least the major bug with the structure blocks. As far as I know, the structure blocks now work 100%, but I can't be sure. You know, there might be some bugs hiding somewhere. But what I do know is that the main issue with structure blocks not saving the structures to the correct location, and therefore not being able to save them once you exit your world, that's been fixed. It was fixed by Surge, I believe, and he tweeted it out, and now the snapshot is released, so we can all use it, and I've tested it, and they all work, which is great. So I'm going to show you how to use structure blocks. Now, I was going to just use the old tutorial that I recorded back when things were broken, and I was just going to add a few little bits and pieces to that. But in addition to fixing the bugs, structure blocks also got a new option. And so I figured I'd just re-record the whole thing and show you how to use them from the top. So what is a structure block? Well, the first thing you have to know is that structure blocks are for map makers only. Which means, just like command blocks, you won't find them in the creative inventory. If you search, nothing. And you can't use them except in creative mode. So if I come here to game mode 0, which is survival, I can't use them. I can't do anything. I can't break them. They're just there. It's just like command blocks in that regard. So you have to be in game mode 1, creative mode, and the only way to get them is by giving them to yourself with a command. So give @p. @p means the nearest player, and since it's the nearest player to you, that should always be you. And then you want to give yourself a structure block. So just type structure and press tab. And if you press tab again, you'll notice it gives you two suggestions, structure blocks and structure voids. Now, structure voids are a block that's used in your structures that you create with your structure blocks. So I will be covering them. So if you're following along with this tutorial, go ahead and give yourself a structure block, and then also give yourself a structure void. And you're going to want both. So, how do these blocks work? Well, when you place them down, you'll see it starts out in data mode, and the darkening of the tooltip that makes it kind of hard to read because it's all black, that is a bug. That's probably going to be fixed in the next snapshot, but it's a minor bug. Everything still works. It's just hard to read. So yeah. So the first thing that happens when you place this down is you get it in data mode. So if you right click, you'll see it says data mode down here. And if you click on this, you'll get all the different modes. So you have data mode, save mode, load mode, and corner mode. So data mode, for now, is pointless. It's useless. As far as anyone can tell, there's nothing to do with it, or at least nobody has figured out what it's for yet. So in 1.9, these data blocks were used to store chest data and other tile entity things in structures, but you can do that with the regular save structure blocks now. And even if that's what these are for anyway, as like sort of a second way to do that, we don't know what that means when it says custom data tag name, because we don't know how to name data tags, and even if it was just to put a data tag in there, we wouldn't know the format for what this is used for. So yeah, data mode is an enigma for now. Probably is going to be removed before the final release of 1.10 unless they tell us what it's for, but you can ignore it for now. We're going to be using the other three modes to create our structures. So the first mode we're going to use is corner mode. So when you go into save mode, like this block here, you have to specify the position relative to this save block and the size of your structure. And sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to do. You could always go into F3 mode and plot out your coordinates and try to get them right. And it does help you out by showing you this border around the volume that you're going to be saving. But it's still kind of annoying. To do everything manually is just tedious. So luckily, Mojang have given us corner blocks. So the way corner blocks work is you go into corner mode, and you name your structure. And this is the structure name you're going to be using for every other block. This is going to be identifying this exact structure and no other. So in this case, you can see this is just a simple house. Not the best looking thing. I'm not a builder. I'm a functionalist. I'm a redstoner. Please don't fault me. But yeah, so this is my simple house. So I'm calling it simple house. So I place the corner block there. And you'll notice that this corner block is not included in the structure. It's going to be everything inside there, so from this tip of the corner on. So keep that in mind, that these rows and columns are not included. And then you want to put another block, which I seem to have accidentally destroyed. So let's go do that now. So the other block is going to be on the exact opposite corner of this one. So here we are at the bottom left. I don't know how to say that in 3D, but the bottom left. So this one has to be on the top right. So that would be right on top of here. So I'm going to make a little platform for myself. Put this down, break the platform. And see, this one will touch the other corner just at the tip here. And you set that to corner mode. Corner, and you call it the same thing. It's important that these corner blocks are called exactly the same thing with capitalization and everything, because it's going to be using this as an identifier, so it has to be the same. So once you do that, you can put those around your structure. So you can build your structure first and then place the corner blocks down, or if you know how big your structure is going to be ahead of time, you can place the corner blocks down and then build your structure in between. That doesn't matter. It's probably easier to build your structure first and then put the corners down, but yeah. So just make sure they are touching at the tip. So if you go from the tip of one to the tip of the other, it will encompass your entire structure. So then you can build whatever you want. Like me, I have this nice little house. And let's go in the house. And we have our villager here, who I haven't named, but whatever. And enchantment table, all the stuff you need for a house. You know what? Let's put some structure blocks in here. Why not? And there was a pressure plate. So yeah, when I was testing, I cleared out some space and cleared out a bit too much, but that's okay. So here's our little table. It's a basic house, right? So that villager will stay in that house, which is why I'm using an iron door so he doesn't escape. And then, when we're done and we want to save this, we make a save block. So this is just the same structure block, just changed into save mode. And what you want to do is you want to name this structure with the same name you gave those corner blocks. So in this case, it's simple house, capital S, capital H. Once you have that, you can just press detect, and it'll say size successfully detected, and you'll get this outline, which wasn't there before. It was only there before for me because I had already been using it. But it will highlight this so you can see if anything's cut off in here, you can move those corner blocks appropriately to get them in, and then you're going to have to press detect again, but not too hard. And in this way, it will detect the position and structure size for you and automatically fill those values in, which makes it a lot easier to build and not have to worry about all your positions. So now if I want to save it, I have this all filled in automatically and I have my structure name here. All I have to do is click save. Now there is this other option here to include entities. So I'm just going to press save and it'll say structure saved as simple house. Now in the latest snapshot, it will in fact save it to disk, and I will show you probably at the end of the video. I'll put a little edit in showing you where those are saved, but for now it's not important. but it is saved to disk with your world. So, once the structure is saved, what can you do with it? Well, you can load it. So you have this structure block set to load mode. The relative position here, you have to manually enter. Unfortunately, there is no analogs to those corner blocks for loading, so you have to do it yourself. But once you press load the first time, it'll show you this bounding box, and that'll tell you where it's going to be loaded. And then after that, don't press load again, just press done whenever you change those coordinates, and it'll just move the bounding box appropriately. So you can see exactly where it's going to be. So even though you have to manually enter the coordinates, it's not so bad. And so now I have my simple house selected here, and I have my position over here, which is nice. So now I can either press load or I can give this a redstone signal. Likewise, the save block, you can save with a redstone signal, you just won't get any output, but that will trigger it to save, and this will trigger it to load. So I can press load, or I can give it redstone. And so now we have an exact copy. However, you'll notice something. My villager is missing. So the villager is an entity. So mobs and vehicles like minecarts and boats, I think also paintings and banners maybe, are all entities. Pretty much anything that can move in fractional coordinates, so not a full block but partial blocks, those are entities. And normally these blocks, these structure blocks, will not save entities. So my villager is just in there and will not be cloned. However, you can change that. So when you go to save this, you can choose to include entities in your save file, and you just turn that on and click save, and now it'll say it's saved. And now if I just load this up, you'll see the villager's still not there. And that's because you have to choose include entities on in the load block as well. Now once you do that, once you've saved it with entities on and are loading it with entities on, then, where'd he go? There he is. Then we get our villager over here, and the original villager is still there. Of course, you can kill that villager and destroy this whole structure, destroy the corner blocks, destroy the save block, and it'll still load in properly. So that's the difference between the clone command, well, one difference between the clone command and structure blocks is you don't need the template. So you can just destroy all of this and kill the villager, and you can still load it in later, and it's perfectly fine. Okay. But now, there's other things you can do when you load in your structures. So, one thing you can do is rotate it. So, you can rotate it 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees. So, or 0. And that's all 4 90-degree rotations. So, let's say I want to flip this house backwards. So, I do 180. And you're going to want to click done before you load it, because it's going to rotate around the corner, not the center, which means it'll be offset in the wrong place. So once you've rotated it, you're going to have to play with the coordinates a bit. So let's just try to get this in the right spot. That's correct on that axis. Let's try 5. Would that be right? Yes. So this is the correct way to load this in. So if I click it again, now it's backwards. It's the same structure. I didn't have to change the original at all. It's just rotated. And yeah, and it looks like, and I wasn't sure about this, but it looks like it will kill any entities that are inside the structure loading area if you're including entities, because there's only one villager there even though the one was loaded in before. So it will kill off your entities that are in the way, which might be a problem or it might be exactly what you want. So yeah, that's how it works. So you can rotate it. In addition to rotating, and I'm just going to rotate this back. So that was -5, 1, 0. I'm just going to flip this back. Oh. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, it doesn't kill the entities. Okay. There are 2 villagers in there. I just couldn't see them before. And one just suffocated in there. But yeah, so it won't kill the entities, but it will replace the blocks. So yeah, but one thing you can do besides rotating is flipping. Now, I think the UI for flipping is not the most intuitive. It took me a little while to understand what the labels meant, but this button right here is for flipping. Now, if it's a line, it means it will not flip. This means it will flip on the x-axis, I believe, and this means it will flip on the z-axis. I might have gotten those mixed up, but they're the two different horizontal axes, and these are flipping over each of those. So if I do this and press load, then you'll see it flipped on the which axis is this? Okay, so it flipped over the x-axis and ended up over here because I didn't change the offsets to accommodate it, but it flipped over the x-axis. So if I were to use this, it will flip over the z-axis, and so it would actually flip that way. Which I'm not going to do because it's going to be annoying to adjust the offsets, so I'm going to leave that alone for now. But yeah, you can see how that would work. I'm going to leave that alone. So that's all of that. So now if I leave that on not flipped and 0, it'll come back and replace this part. But there's a thing you can do now, and this is new to this latest snapshot, called structure integrity and seed. So this is a bit of randomness that you can add to your structures when you load them in. So you have the main structure saved already. You don't have to change that, but you can have it, I guess, worn down or broken up or aged, however you want to theme that. You can have some blocks randomly removed, and that depends on this number. So this structure integrity number should be between 0 and 1, and that's a percentage. So 1 is 100%, 0 is 0%, and anything in between is everything in between. And that tells you how much of the structure to actually load in. So if I set this to 0.5, then when I put this signal on, it's going to load in 50% of the structure. So if I do that, you'll see... Oh, you know what? It probably actually will not replace blocks when it does this. So I'm going to want to kill the villager. Oop, that's not working. Kill at e-type equals villagers. So I'm going to kill all the villagers and then just take this structure down so that there are no blocks here. And that's from the one behind it. I'll leave that alone because it'll take too long to break them all. But yeah, I'm just going to take all of this down. Okay, so this part of the structure is gone. So if I load this in, you'll see there are pieces missing. In fact, if I keep loading this in, because it doesn't remove them, it'll eventually complete itself, which is interesting. But yeah, so 50% of it was missing because I set the structure integrity to 5, or to 0.5, to 50%. If I set it to 1, it'll fill in all of it. So you can use that to make it look broken down. Now, if you set the seed to 0, then every time you load in a block, or sorry, every time you load in a structure with a less than 1 integrity and a 0 seed, it's going to randomly decide which blocks to place and which blocks to remove. Or I guess in this case, as you can see, it doesn't actually remove the blocks, it just doesn't place them. So yeah, it'll choose randomly every time. However, sometimes you want to make sure that the same blocks are removed every time you copy the structure. And for that, you can set the seed. Now, for anyone who does anything with programming, you'll understand what a random seed is. For those who don't, I'll try to explain it real quick. Basically, computers can't actually pick random numbers. They just aren't capable of it. So when you need a random number, a computer will pick what's called a pseudo-random number, which means it's random enough to be used as though it were random, but it's actually predictable. And the way it works is you start with one number called the seed, and then whatever, it does some calculations, gives you a random number, And then whatever that output is becomes the new seed for the next time you want a random number. And so usually the seed starts out as something like the number of milliseconds since you started up your computer. So it's something that's not really very predictable. But if you use the same seed, you will get the same sequence of random numbers guaranteed. Which means if you give this any seed, any non-zero seed, and you load this in, it will produce the same structure with the same missing blocks every time. So that allows you to be consistent if you were to copy it multiple times, but you want it to be, have less than 100% integrity and be broken down, but you want it to be broken down in the same way every time. You just pick a seed that leaves the blocks out that you think looks good. And for that, it's really just guess and check, trial and error. Just keep checking seeds until you get one you like. Okay, so there is one last thing I want to show you. And that is the structure void. So what is this structure void? Well, here we have another load block for our simple house. We're going to turn include entities off because I don't want villagers in here. But if you look at where that border is, it's inside this chunk of dirt, right? So if I load this in, you'll notice all the dirt up here in the corners, all the dirt inside the house, all of that got removed to replace it with air, which was what was in the original structure, right? Because in our original structure, there was air inside the house and up in the roof and all of that. So that's what it replaced it with. But what if you don't want that? So in this case, what if I want this buried in the dirt? So I actually want all the inside to be filled with dirt. I want there to be dirt on the outside. I want there to be dirt everywhere that there's not another block. Well, for that, use the structure block. So this, I just made a little command block to replace the dirt. So the structure is gone in there. It's just dirt. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these structure blocks. So when you place these structure blocks down, they're invisible. You can see a little hitbox if you mouse over it, but otherwise they're invisible, intangible, they're, whatever. But if you go into the save block and you choose show invisible blocks on, you'll see that there is a small block here, which is supposed to be red, but just like the text here, there's a glitch where everything's rendering black, which they will fix. But you can see a difference in size. There's a small block here and a big block here. So yeah, all those big blocks, which are blue normally, represent air. So everywhere there's a big block, there's air. Everywhere there's a small block, instead of air, there's a structure void. And actually one thing I haven't checked is if I give myself a barrier block, which is also invisible, and I place that, no. Okay, so it doesn't show barrier blocks when you choose show invisible blocks, but it will show you air blocks, which are these big ones that are blue, and it will show you structure void blocks, which are these little ones, which are red. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace all the air blocks with structure void blocks. So let me do that. Okay, so all of those are replaced. So you can't place structure voids on top of structure voids, apparently, which is a bit annoying, but it's not a huge deal. So I'm just going to come in here, replace every one of those big squares, or sorry, big cubes, which are air, with a little cube, which is a structure block. So in order to... Oh wait, maybe you can. So if I just aim at this hitbox, yes, you can, okay. So, replace these. And it's getting to be a bit tedious. So, I think I'm just going to quickly do the inside. Oop. So I'm just going to come and fill in all of these so that there will be no air blocks, only structure void blocks. Over here, 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 and here. Okay, so I filled the entire thing with structure voids and removed all the air. So, if I can press that button, but there's a void in the way. Oh man. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save our structure again. Remember, this is the save block. So now the only difference between what we had before and what we have now is that all the air has been replaced with structure voids. So if I go ahead and I load this structure in again, now that it's been resaved, you'll notice all this dirt on the front that was cleared out before is still there. The only one that's been replaced is where the button was, because that is a non-structure block. It's also a non-air block, so that got replaced. So let's find our way in. And you'll notice there's dirt inside as well. And if we come in, there's dirt everywhere. So you can see that everywhere that I placed a structure void, what was there originally, the dirt, remains. So you can use this for lots of things. You can use this like I just did to bury structures. You can have, combine this with the integrity option, use a lower integrity and make it look like something's been buried in an ancient ruin or something and worn down over the years. Or another option is that this doesn't have to be dirt. This can be any blocks, including, say, water. So you can have underwater structures with water source blocks filling it up, which is really cool. So those are the main features of structure blocks. Also, unless they changed it in the snapshot, which I don't believe they did, if I check F3, you'll see where I stand here, I don't know, 0 block light. Maybe they did change it. So structure blocks used to give off light, but it looks like they've removed that, which is good. Okay, because people were complaining that structure blocks give off light, but that meant if your structure had snow in it, then placing those corner blocks there would melt the snow or ice. So people were complaining, so I guess they removed that and they no longer give off light, which is fine. So that is how structure blocks work. I will be editing in a short thing about how to find your saved structures on your hard disk so that you can distribute them to other people, or put them in your other worlds or whatever, let people use them in their worlds. So I'll edit that in right about now. So, when you save a structure, where does it go? Well, it goes right here. So in that demo, you saw I saved a structure called Simple House. When I did that, it created this simplehouse.nbt file. Now, if you have something like NBT Explorer, you can open that up and look at it. The way it saves it is basically like any other NBT file, but it saves it as a template that says all the types of blocks you used, and then a blocks folder which says at each position which one of the template blocks was used. And then it also includes all the tile entity information and stuff like that, and entities themselves. So those are all in there. But it stores these in this folder. So 500 Subspecial is the name of this world, because I originally created it for my 500 subscriber special and then just kept building in it. So yeah. So if you go into your Minecraft folder, which on Windows is under %appdata%, you go in there and there will be a Minecraft folder. So you go into saves, and this will have all of your worlds. You go into the world where you saved that structure, and then there will be a structures folder. You go in there and voila. You will have all your structures that you've ever saved in that world listed here. So you can, of course, just keep them here and then use them for yourself, if you're building a map or whatever. Or if you've built a structure that you want other people to use, you can distribute this NBT file, and anyone can put it in the structures folder of their worlds and use your structures without having to build them, without having to have your world. They can create their own worlds, put this structure in there, and spawn them in with structure blocks, which is really, really cool. I give it a week max before there's a website out there that's just going to be a library of user-submitted structures. If it doesn't already exist, I will make one, because that, I think, is the biggest benefit to these structure blocks, is that you can distribute them to other people to use in their worlds, instead of just keeping them saved with a world and only work in that world. So, yeah. Like I said, I suggest you guys go ahead, especially people who are builders and know how to make things look good much better than I do. Go ahead, make your structures, make some amazing builds, and save them and distribute them for other people to use in their worlds. It could be amazing. And since you can store tile entities and you can store entities, you could actually make dungeons with like spawners and enemies and chests with loot. And if you check, I recently released a video before this one explaining how to use loot tables in these structures, because it's mostly straightforward, but the way loot tables work, once the loot is generated, the loot table is removed from the actual block. So you have to make sure to keep that in mind. If you check out the video, I go into a little more detail. That'll be linked below. But yeah, so you can make dungeon designs and distribute them for everyone to use. So I think these structure blocks are awesome. I don't know what 1.10 has in store for us in the future, because remember, this is only the second snapshot, but I can't imagine anything they do will be better than these structure blocks, because they're just amazing. So yeah, I guess I will cut back to my other video and you can get the end of that. Cut. Okay, so now that you know how to use structure blocks to save, to load, to rotate your structures with or without entities, with full or less than full integrity, random seeds, all kinds of rotation, and then using structure voids to keep the blocks that were there before instead of replacing them with air. And you know that they all work on redstone, or at least the save and load blocks do, so keep that in mind. You can use redstone creations or command block creations to trigger structures to load, which is cool. People have actually already saved redstone devices inside their structures that will load more structures, so you can have self-building structures, which is pretty cool. And the last thing you need to know is that there is a size limit for these structures. You can only save structures that are up to 32 by 32 by 32 blocks big, which is pretty big, but sometimes you might want a bigger structure. So since you can't save those because that would be a lot of data, what you can do is use that technique I just mentioned of including in your structure. So you make your structures in parts, in multiple structures, and then you'd include in each structure a redstone signal going into another structure block that loads the second part of the structure. And so that when the first part is loaded, it'll trigger the block and load the second part. And so by doing that, you can chain them together and create full structures. Technically, and this isn't something I've seen done, but you could also save command blocks in your structures, which means you could have randomly generated structures that load different parts depending on, you know, whatever, scoreboards or, you know, anything you could detect with command blocks. So that could be pretty cool. One thing to be careful of when you do that, though. So see this little andesite, or granite, sorry, this granite path here? That was my attempt at creating a structure, which was just a granite block, but also in that structure was another structure block with a redstone signal that spawned itself. So it was a self-repeating structure that just kept going. And that worked, but it also crashed the game because apparently it's all processed in the same tick. And so when you end up with an infinite amount of processes to run, or sorry, an infinite... Okay, I'm going to say this in computer science jargon. For those of you who don't understand, sorry, just ignore me. But it got a Stack Overflow by trying to run that structure block method an infinite number of times in one tick. So it crashed the game. That's all you need to know. So be careful that you don't get infinite recursion in these structure blocks, because they are seemingly all run kind of simultaneously, and you don't want to crash your game. So yeah, I guess that's all you need to know for now. Those data blocks are still a mystery and always will be. Maybe they'll tell us what it means. But for now, until next time, keep building structures and keep redstoning.